So a few people have asked me these questions and about how Sahaj Marg relates to various other religions, or specifically Christianity and Jesus. And I wanted to address some of those things because I think it's important for people to know that this is an inclusive practice. And these ideas may not agree with your understanding of your personal religion or spirituality in general. So I am not challenging your ideas in any way. I'm just letting you know what we believe and what we're taught and what our stories are in our system. And it's good to know what other people are doing. Every person in the world that's involved in a religion should understand what the other religion and other spiritual organizations believe, because you're dealing with these people, and people have different customs in their countries and in their own states. You can move from a northern state to a southern state, and you have to learn what these southern people believe so that you can adapt and deal with them in a respectful way. And so this is something that it's a good idea to understand other people's belief system, even though it may or may not agree with what you understand. And it doesn't mean that there has to be some sort of dispute between you. You can just accept that other people believe things that are different than yourself. And it's good to know what they believe, because you have to interact with them and you're sharing a planet with them. And whether you are right or wrong, or whether they are right or wrong, everybody has to have a basic understanding. So the Sahaj Marg system of meditation that I've been doing, this offer of free transmission that's been happening for the past, few weeks, and goes on to December 25th. The system is an inclusive system, and the other spiritual masters and religious organizations are recognized for their spiritual accomplishments in our system. And some of those works from other organizations are quoted from, and stories are given from those other organizations. But our spiritual organization is something new. It is not an extension of Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma. The third president of the system gave a talk about this about a year ago, his last public talk before he ascended into what we call the brighter world. It was very clear to people that even though that he and the other spiritual masters were raised as Hindus, that this is not an extension of Hinduism. And he himself was educated at a Christian, what would be, I think, the equivalent to elementary school. He spent a number of years in this this Christian school, and he learned about the teachings of the Bible. He read the Bible, and he quoted from the Bible, and he gave stories from the Bible, just like he has given stories from other religious traditions, because this is considered a inclusive system, and all of the previous religions that were valid in nature are recognized, and the spiritual accomplishments of those spiritual masters that created these religions are recognized and are viewed as a contributing force, a contributing body of work to what has now become our spiritual organization. And on a deeper level, the second master in the system, the second spiritual president of our organization, was somebody that lives simultaneously in what we call the brighter worlds and the material world. He was having conversations with all of the great spiritual masters, saints and mystics who have lived on this planet before. He was somebody that could interact with them anytime he chose. He existed in all of these worlds simultaneously in a much more conscious way than we do, because we are all existing in the spiritual realms. We have a soul, we have these etheric bodies. I've talked about this in many of my other videos. We have energetic bodies, and this is something that can be proven by science, no less. And science is a very crude form of research. It relies on the material world for its data and not the spiritual world. And yet even science has proven that there's an energetic body around our human system. And so he was able to go from one world to another. And these various spiritual beings blessed him in this mission. He was a very humble person, and he went with them, and they helped design and contribute to this system. And they're referred to as either the divine hierarchy or the united masters. But they are people that lived on this planet and contributed something spiritually to this planet, and now are still working on the planet from a different plane of existence, and they are considered a part of our system. Now, this person, Babaji, was someone who talked specifically to his spiritual master, the first president of the system, and they had regular interactions even though the first president of the system had already ascended into what we call the brighter world. But Babaji also had conversations and interactions with Jesus and Krishna and Buddha and Muhammad, and he had interactions with people like Swami Vivekananda, a very high yogic master. So this is something that there is an idea that this is an inclusive practice, and I can't say that enough, that all of these spiritual beings are regarded with respect and are participating in one way or another with our spiritual system, because they are always wanting to help humanity evolve. And this is one of the vehicles that's been made available to people to rise to a higher level of spiritual consciousness. The view that we have that might differ from what your religion has taught you and what is commonly thought in most of the modern day religions is that every single person has the potential to rise up to the level of these spiritual masters, and it's what these spiritual masters came down to do. They did not come down here to be worshipped. They did not come down here to be treated like gods. They came down here to make people, to help people rise up to their level of existence. They gave a platform. There's this idea of the 100 monkey syndrome, where if 100 monkeys do something, then all the monkeys across the world get this ability. If they use some sort of tool, if they get enough monkeys to use some sort of tool, I've talked about this in previous videos about critical mass. But when a spiritual master, a high-level spiritual being, descends onto this planet, or when an ordinary human being works their way up through a series of lifetimes to a high level of spiritual attainment, everybody around the world now has that opportunity. I've talked about the 4-minute mile in previous videos. Someone runs the 4-minute mile and they break a barrier for humankind, and then all people around the globe are able to run or have the potential to run a 4-minute mile. It's become something that people are able to do now. I said climbing Mount Everest. Somebody breaks a barrier, and then all other people have the ability now to ascend up to that level of existence. So those are material examples, but this is much more the case on the spiritual plane of existence. When a person evolves spiritually or descends down here on a high level of spiritual attainment, and they have a human life from that spiritual level, that allows a much easier path for the rest of us to rise up to that level. And it takes work, it takes discipline, it takes developing your heart, it takes developing your character, but it's something for all of us to work towards and ascend to. It changes the consciousness of the world around us every time somebody's heart lights up and they start loving God on a high level and continuous level. And that energy goes out to their brothers and sisters in the world, and it changes the planet for the better. Just like the dark conditions that are going on now are bringing humanity down to a lower vibratory level. So for this reason, there are people who have entered into this spiritual system, and it's brought them closer to their God or their spiritual master that they identify with in terms of their religion. This is something where there is a more connection to their spiritual system. It helps people to connect to God and on a deeper level, and to love God on a deeper level. And there's not this sense of competitiveness between spiritual organizations or religions, as again, it's an inclusive system. It's not something where there is competition for people to come to one practice or another. This system helps people connect to God. And all the great saints and spiritual masters and mystics that have done this before on planet Earth or somewhere else in the universe are regarded with respect and with reverence, and many of them have blessed this system, and they are active participants in moving this system forward and helping humanity to rise to a higher spiritual level.